popping pills, man, I feel just like a rock star. My brothers got their gas and they always be smoking like a rock star. Walking with me, call up on the Uzi and show walking in the shot tops. My homies pull up on your body, make that thing go grata-ta-ta. Switch my whip, came back in black, I'm starting saying recipes of vodka. Fucking with me, call up on the Uzi and show walking in the shot tops. Who's that though we blowing smoke, she hit me like a fire like I'm awesome. The fool on stage, while they let my fucking show in a car. Shit was legendary, do TV, I don't know what I'm into. Cocaine on the table, like a boy, don't give a damn. Dude, your girlfriend is so goofy, she just tryna get in. Saying I'm with the band. Now she acting out of pocket, tryna grab up on my pants. So these bitches in my trailer say they ain't got a man. And they ain't brought a friend. I've been fucking hoes and popping pills, man, I feel just like a rock star. My brothers got their gas and they always be smoking like a rock star. Fucking with me, call up on the Uzi and show up in the shot tops. Then my homies pull up on your block, they make that thing go grata-ta-ta.
I've been in the hills, fucking superstars, feeling like a pop star. Need bad bitches jumping in the pool and they ain't got no bra. Turn her back, pulling on the tracks and now she screaming out no more. Drinking any bad bitches jumping in the pool and they ain't got no bra. Turn her back, 12 garage, you only got 6 cars. If he say I'm looking like a host now, green hundreds in my safe, I got whole racks. LA bitches always asking where the broke at. Living like a rock star, smash out on the top car, sweeter than a pop tart. You know you were not hard, I didn't make that hot chart. You might used to trap hard, living like a rock star, living like a rock star.
I've been fucking hoes and popping pills, man, I feel just like a rock star. My brothers got their gas and they always be smoking like a rock star. Fucking with me, call up on the Uzi and show up in the shot tops. Then my homies pull up on your block, they make that thing go grata-ta-ta.
I've been in the hills, fucking superstars, feeling like a pop star. Need bad bitches jumping in the pool and they ain't got no bra. Turn her back, pulling on the tracks and now she's
All right.
drinking any bad bitches jumping in the pool and they ain't got no bra. Turn her back, 12 garage, you only got 6 cars. If he say I'm looking like a host now, green hundreds in my safe, I got
Alrighty, guys, what is going on? We are about 5 minutes away from the FOMC's interest rate decision. We all know that this one's pretty much going to be a pause. We've seen the numbers on this in the data for quite a while. If it's not, there'll be quite the surprise out there. But for me, it's really like, hey, what are they going to talk about for the future, right? Are they going to maybe talk about or hint at cutting a little bit earlier? Are they going to have more of a dovish or hawkish tone? I am kind of curious what exactly the market's overall reaction is to this one. It'll be pretty important. We can see that July actually is now pricing in a cut at like a 14.5% chance. So that is a pretty interesting number there. If this is a pretty good event, we could end up seeing maybe July, the cut coming in there even more. So I don't know, we'll see how this ends up flip-flopping. I'm sure it'll be, right around expectations, so to say. I don't think that it'll actually change too much unless they really do say something pretty wild. But I'm going to have the news up here from Thinkorswim. Everybody's favorite broker lately, Charles Schwab, right? No, probably everybody's least favorite. You guys know that. But looking at the news here, we'll get the decision as soon as it happens, hopefully. There's always nice articles out there where we can see exactly the wording that changed from the last time and different things with that. So if you guys do get those links, like with the wording changes and stuff, let me know. I'm sure it'll be all over X or Twitter. But it's a very big event. Vote up in the poll if you guys have not done so yet. 26 total votes, overwhelmingly positive. Looks like it's going to win this time. There's only 3 minutes left. This poll will close fast because, well, it has to, because the interest rate decision comes out in 3 minutes. So, all right. Looking at the SPY, though, nice all-time highs today. Glad to see it. You know, we look at the daily chart. There's a huge extension to the upside here on the SPY. Let me turn my drawings off. I have too many levels. I get asked about it too much, you know. But this is what we're watching on the daily chart. Obviously, we had that nice gap up into today. Powell can change everything. He has that power. He can do it. He's the guy that really could, but hopefully he just throws some fuel on the fire and we see a another push higher here. Can we get the song? Yeah, for sure. Let me throw this in the chat for you guys. It was the very first song on this list. It's pretty cool. This is a pretty good remix channel. DG Music, bass music. They're editing the crap out of these popular songs. Yeah, it really will, Joe. It will. Hit the subs. Man, I used to love the subs that were in that Hellcat I had. The thing was, those subs were wild. Don't like the gap, David said. Yeah. It happens a lot with news in the morning, you know. We've seen it happen a few times on the way up where there's been solid gaps. The market did continue pretty well after those gaps. I got to give it that, so. 1% on the day, though. The average percent move for SPY is 0.47%. But we should be just a few seconds off here. Around 30 seconds, and we'll be having the decision happen. So, switching over to the 1 minute on the SPY. Should I do this, or should I do the 4 chart? We'll do the 4 chart here. Unless you guys don't like it, we'll see. Hey, Gregory, appreciate you. No, Joe, it's actually not, man. It's actually not better, which is crazy to say. All right, here we go. I appreciate you, Gregory, coming in right as the decision happens. And uh-oh, the market is not reacting well so far. Look at the 4 big stocks here. Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple. Seeing a lot of red. We got SPY on the top left, of course. The volume is hitting like crazy. I will say, though, it's not like the fight's over. You know, there's always a lot of chop, right, when these decisions happen. Yep, they kept it paused, obviously. We all knew that that was probably going to be the case. Now we just need to see those wording changes and etc. Oh, there goes my CNBC. That's funny. Palmer with the sad face. Man, look at Microsoft, though. What's up with Microsoft actually coming back alive? Same thing with Nvidia. It's kind of interesting. Apple is pulling back pretty hard, though. So is SPY. Obviously, we need to see it turn around pretty well. But hey, Gregory, appreciate you. Coming in with the super chat. Always coming in with the supers. Gregory's pretty clutch there. Gonna end that poll now. Haha, Gengar says, where is the Powell song? Don't worry, Gengar. The tradition will live on later in the stream here. You know this isn't surprising. I'm not surprised that it's paused, but a lot of, I don't know, chop right here. Oh man, this music is banging today. 'Twas expected. Yeah, it's still not totally over though. Let's see what Powell can do for us. Oh wow, look at that. The SPY is now green since the decision has happened. Are we gonna see a nice explosion back? These moves can be pretty volatile. We've seen some volatile candles and some wild turnarounds before. Look at the last FOMC. Is it normal there's a pullback like this, then make a new high, Joe said? I mean, it's not that like we're always seeing a new high on a pullback like this, but on an intraday basis, a lot of times, like if you watch these FOMC events over and over and over again, and you watch the volatility that hits right whenever the decisions come out, for example, you will notice that sometimes there's pops up and then it comes running back down. It just consolidates like crazy. The candles end up being pretty large usually in all directions, and then over the course of like heading into Powell speaking, it'll usually pick more of a direction. And then sometimes Powell turns it right back around, you know, so it can get pretty wild here. It can get pretty wild. 542.70 resistance coming up on SPY. Having a little trouble breaking out there right before the drop. That was resistance as well. SEP showing higher unemployment inbound. Oof. We don't want to be seeing higher unemployment. Let's get to CNBC. Indicates only one cut coming this year. So before this event, the market was pricing in 2 cuts. So he said only 1 cut this year. Let's see the probabilities now. All right, so the probability of a cut in July lowered more. It's still pretty spot on though for September, so I'm curious. There's still a lot of time left in the year though, guys. You know, there's still like half the year left. So there'll be a lot more data that comes in and different things that will end up swinging the market. But he's indicating only 1 more cut. Where do you guys think it'll happen? Do you think it'll be September? Do you think it'll be November, December? I'm sure it'll start to change all over the place here over the next couple weeks. The time to cut is now, Palmer said. Do you think so? I don't know. It's like, do we want to cut too early while inflation's still like stagnant? Or do we want to like wait till it really falls? Or I don't know. November for sure with the election. Yeah, Joe. Maybe before the election then? It is going to get a little bit more wild into November. I'm actually surprised I haven't been hearing more stuff about the election. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I haven't heard too much. Granted, I try not to pay attention to that stuff too much either. Not anymore. Switching back to the SPY. How's DJT stock? You know, I haven't looked at that one. Yeah, doing nothing. 3.33% today. Palantir sold all the way back off. Starting to catch some green now, though. NVIDIA not doing anything. Let's bring up the 4 chart setup again. 125 on NVIDIA, maybe as support here. Damn. Yeah, not the best movement so far. Very slow and choppy, honestly. There's really no clear direction. Should I cut my SPY calls, Mando said? Mando, I would definitely consider it, especially if you're too over leveraged. And I'm also going to keep watching this little support here. Let me switch to the SPY on the 1 minute. I couldn't quite see it on that other chart. Like right around 541.60, maybe 541.40. I'll definitely watch those areas as supports coming up. Let the old man speak. Yeah. Bring out Powell, right? We're still 13 minutes out from the man, the myth, the legend. Oh, no. Sorry, 23 minutes out. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, Demir said. Hell yeah. I want to put that on a shirt. And have a chart of Tilray on there. That'd be pretty cool. And underneath it, it would say, you know, it would have a dash and say, Mike D'Antonio. Gotta give Mike credit on that one. All right. Grab a quick drink there. Yeah, this music is good today. Yeah, Tilray has a major support on the daily chart around 170 to 175. Even around 180 here, it's not too bad. I've been eyeing it up a lot the past couple days on this support. Be nice to see the MJ stock start to pop off a little bit more from there. And then say, I'm cooked with a dude blazed out of his mind. Palmer. That's where you'd lose Mike, Palmer, right there. That would not be acceptable on the shirt. Let me whip out Adobe while we wait. Yeah. Let's see, ADBE. Adobe. You know, don't they have earnings? Okay, yeah, tomorrow. I was going to say Oracle just went nuts on their earnings. That was a crazy run to the upside that they had. Doing push-ups. I know a lot of people like to watch the videos while they're at the gym. I wonder if anyone's at the gym for Powell right now. I know Sean earlier said that he was bumping us on the way to the golf course. Let's go, Sean. Good luck at your league. Sean plays every Wednesday. It's funny because every time there's an FOMC meeting or something, or an FOMC event, he's always at the course. You better shoot him low today, Sean. All right, let's check on the SM bot here. Still about 20 minutes out from the man, the myth, the legend. So if anybody out there needs to do anything before JP starts speaking, you better do it now. AVGO's on the SM bot right now. I will say, I bet that, oh wow, it's actually not looking too bad. Broadcom, they report after the bell today. But the stock's looking pretty good. I was going to say, though, it's probably slowing up quite a bit right now with everything getting so choppy. The bot's not really hitting too many things right now. It is hitting Oracle still, though. Oracle's looking pretty hot, making, well, right at a new high of the day. Pretty close. Hey, Demir said we're at almost 100 views here. Yeah, nice one. Nice. Let's go. Let's go, guys. Smash that like button if you're just now joining up. Let's get YouTube to help us out a little bit on the algo there. 23 total likes. You know, as they say, as Matthew McConaughey says, those are rookie numbers out there.
All right, all right, all right.
Boeing was on the SM bot earlier today for puts. I was eyeing that one up intraday. Ended up doing pretty well into the low of this morning, but well, I guess into lunchtime, but FedEx on the SM bot, FDX, yeah, a lot of chop right now. A lot of chop out there. Noticing the SPY, it's Like literally right in the middle. Let's see the watch list here. Peloton, ARM, Hims, Penn, all up over 6% though on the day. Starting to consolidate a lot though. Coinbase as well. I did notice that Bitcoin was popping off a little bit this morning. They started dipping quite a bit since the Powell event. That's a pretty big drop there. Dropped like $1,000. Basing it on the overall move, it's not that crazy of a move, but it's definitely a pretty good intraday candle. Look before open today, though. Man, it really popped off with that CPI data. The market was so bullish on that CPI data this morning. That was nuts. That was great. Just got to the range, Sean said. Hell yeah, Sean. Get in the game. Let's go. Maybe Jerome Powell will say close the door again. Sean, if you roll in a long putt today, I'm going to take credit for it, but right when you roll it in, you have to say, close the effing door. Right whenever you roll it. Apple 218. Let's see. Nice, you know, Apple's hitting pretty good since this event. It's been sitting very well. Wow, that's pretty good. It is starting to fall back off a little bit more now, but overall, it came up and tested that all-time high. Apple has one of the more wild daily charts that I've seen. Let's remove my drawings here. Look at this. It's pretty good. Past 2 days were insane. We had the Worldwide Developers Conference. What was your favorite thing that you guys heard about with Apple from that conference? Was it Affirm with the buy now, pay later stuff? Was it their AI news? I don't know. I'm curious. Was it something with like a watch or a laptop? The iPad? No Drip said the iPad. You know, that iPad Pro is actually catching my eye quite a bit, Drip. I'm not gonna lie. The iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard, I'm kind of liking it. I might have to pick one up. If it can run Bookmap, I'll get it. I'm not sure that Bookmap can run on Apple, actually. I never checked that. Yeah, you know what? That's weird. I never thought of that. Manny might know. If not, I'm going to message him and ask him right now. I just asked him, is it compatible with Apple? We'll see what they say. Wishing for a charger with their products. For Apple. Only a mortgage to get one, Mason said. Yeah. I wonder how much that iPad Pro is going to cost. I didn't see the pricing on it. Or I don't remember it. It says, please check the article I found for you. Yeah, it was weird. They'll answer me in a minute. I think a bot tried to answer me and it didn't know what I was asking. Damn bots, guys. These AIs. Gotta love them, right? Tilray, 3.72%. Hey, there we go. You can put Bookmap on Mac. That's awesome. Sick. A fake mic tried to answer. Yeah. What else did you want on the shirt, Tom? Drawing up a comp? Oh, no. That's funny. I would do like a Tilray chart with like a whole bunch of chop on it. And then I would do just the quote with Mike. Is all I would look for there. Touched it for a second, hoping 220 end of the day for Apple. That'd be really nice. 220. If we actually go look at the book map right now, Apple has a lot of shares at 220. 250,000 almost, to be exact. 249,000. Sheesh. Spicy, Joe said. Spicy. Don't start talking about the food. That's a pretty funny joke. I like that. We're almost at 30 likes, though. If you guys are enjoying it so far, smash that like button. We will have the man, the myth, the legend, Jerome Powell speaking in just 12 minutes. Is when that event will start. We're getting awfully close. I've got it on in the background. Don't worry. We're just waiting. We're just waiting for it to start, and then we'll have it side by side with the market like usual. Bring up the watch list again. Man, ARM was so good today. I said this in the Discord, and it was meant to be a bit of a joke, but I think I'm actually going to do it. ARM was so good today. I think I'm switching the gym day to ARM day today. We were going to do like back or shoulders or something. I think we're just going to do arms today because it's just calling out to me, the arms are. Purple tie. Yeah, what do you guys think? Purple tie? Red tie? Blue tie? I know everybody's thinking purple tie today. We're going to get a poll going with Powell. You know, will Powell get us some more momentum, or are we going to be stuck here? Curious what everybody thinks. The SPY is almost going green now. Almost. All right, here we go. Vote it up. What do you think JP is going to do? Will Powell fuel this rally? Yes, SPY will rise. Nope, reversal or neutral. Let's see. With them only talking about one cut this year, I don't see how that's very positive. I don't know, though. It's tough. There's a lot more to be said than just, you know, the one cut this year. There's a lot that goes into these things. I voted up. I know Manny would be proud. Hell yeah, Mason. Manny'd be really proud for you.
All right.
You know what they say about Powell making the market go up, don't you? You know what they say.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That's the stats on Powell getting the market to rise or not, right there. Let's go look at US 10Y. I really like looking at the yields during events like this. So far today, the yields fell off quite a bit this morning, but they did start to come back a little bit with this event, but not a lot. Not enough to make a difference. But that's good to see US 10Y down like that. It's been hovering like right around this 4.3 to 4.35% mark. You know, it's weird, but the yield is almost like on a support. It's a pretty big one too. Like, there's been a lot of hits off this level and rejections, and once the breakdown happens here, it's usually pretty good too. It's not looking very good today. I've got a bad feeling Powell might end up being a little bit hawkish. Apple's ripping now, man, he said. Hey, let's see. AAPL really exploding. Beautiful, Manny. Breaking 218 up to 218.90. Don't forget about 220 coming up. It just wiped out all the sellers at 219. Wow, it's actually almost to 220 as we speak. Wow. We were just looking at it a minute ago, and it really had a nice breakout at 218. Apple said, hold my beer. Yeah, it did. Hold my damn beer is right. I said this yesterday. I'm going to say it again. Apple needs a massage after carrying the market like this. Their back's going to be hurting. I'm just kidding, though. There's a lot of other stocks doing all right. Let's look at the heat map. I know it's delayed, but, you know, there's a lot of stocks doing fairly well today. This heat map's delayed. I think I actually have my other one open, don't I? Ah, no, I don't. Never mind. That was Vail. It touched 219.50 on the high. Yeah, that's pretty good for Apple. That was a fairly good break there. Little explosion for us. Yeah, these songs are sick today, man. Look at what the video looks like too. It's like these badass BMWs and stuff. I like it. You all know I'm a big car guy, but some people aren't.
All right, all right, all right.
It's time!
Serve, you're a fucking legend. Alrighty, guys, that was Powell. That was our tradition. Powell should be out in just about 2 minutes. Don't worry, guys. I'll have him live here for you. Right here, you know, I keep the Federal Reserve press conference open in the background. Oh, they're playing that elevator music. Let's listen to it for a second. I feel like I'm playing The Sims. This is what Powell listens to when he decides how to fuck us all over. All right. I'll leave it there, though, for now. Should be open here in just a minute. But Serve, you are a legend, man. Thank you so much, Serve. You're always coming in so clutch here with the super chats. Appreciate you. And holy shit, Manny. Tassie really did just break 180 like no joke. That is a badass move by Tesla above 180 right ahead of the event. Look at this on the book map, guys. Look at how it broke 180 there. That was massive. 233,000 volume on that 180 break. Let's switch to Apple, which is still consolidating a little bit around 219. Needs to get up and higher than 220, but... Ah, freedom, man, he said. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, JP should be here in just a minute, so we're going to have to end the poll. 47 total votes. SPY will rise 1. That is the winner of the poll. With 57% of the total vote. Nope, reversal with 31%. Just underneath. All right, guys. Here he is. Let's go.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on achieving our dual mandate goals of maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Our economy has made considerable progress toward both goals over the past 2 years. The labor market has come into better balance, with continued strong job gains and a low unemployment rate. Inflation has eased substantially from a peak of 7% to 2.7%, but is still too high. We are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% goal in support of a strong economy that benefits everyone. Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. We are maintaining our restrictive stance of monetary policy in order to keep demand in line with supply and reduce inflationary pressures. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has continued to expand at a solid pace. Although GDP growth moderated from 3.4% in the fourth quarter of last year to 1.3% in the first quarter, private domestic final purchases, which excludes inventory investment, government spending, and net exports, and usually sends a clearer signal on underlying demand, grew at 2.8% in the first quarter, nearly as strong as the second half of 2023. Growth of consumer spending has slowed from last year's robust pace, but remains solid. And investment in equipment and intangibles has picked up from its anemic pace last year. Improving supply conditions have supported resilient demand and the strong performance of the U.S. economy over the past year. In our summary of economic projections, committee participants generally expect GDP growth to slow from last year's pace, with a median projection of 2.1% this year and 2.0% over the next 2 years. In the labor market, supply and demand conditions have come into better balance. Payroll job gains averaged 218,000 jobs per month in April and May, a pace that is still strong, but a bit below that seen in the first quarter. The unemployment rate ticked up, but remains low at 4%. Strong job creation over the past couple of years has been accompanied by an increase in the supply of workers, reflecting increases in participation among individuals aged 25 to 54 years and a continued strong pace of immigration. Nominal wage growth has eased over the past year, and the jobs to workers gap has narrowed. Overall, a broad set of indicators suggests that conditions in the labor market have returned to about where they stood on the eve of the pandemic, relatively tight but not overheated. FOMC participants expect labor market strength to continue. The median unemployment rate projection in the SEP is 4.0% at the end of this year and 4.2% at the end of next year. Inflation has eased notably over the past 2 years, but remains above our longer-run goal of 2%. Total PCE prices rose 2.7% over the 12 months ending in April. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 2.8%. The Consumer Price Index, which came out this morning and tends to run higher than the PCE price index, rose 3.3% over the 12 months ending in May, and the core CPI rose 3.4%. The inflation data received earlier this year were higher than expected, though more recent monthly readings have eased somewhat. Longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households and businesses and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation is 2.6% this year, 2.3% next year, and 2.0% in 2026. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. In support of these goals, the committee decided at today's meeting to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5%, and to continue reducing our securities holdings. As labor market tightness has eased and inflation has declined over the past year, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals have moved toward better balance. The economic outlook is uncertain, however, and we remain highly attentive to inflation risks. We've stated that we do not expect it will be appropriate to reduce the target range for the federal funds rate until we have gained greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. So far this year, the data have not given us that greater confidence. The most recent inflation readings have been more favorable than earlier in the year, however, and there has been modest further progress toward our inflation objective. We'll need to see more good data to bolster our confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. We know that reducing policy restraint too soon or too much could result in a reversal of the progress that we've seen on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too late or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment. In considering any adjustments to the target range for the federal funds rate, the committee will carefully assess incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path for the federal funds rate, based on what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario going forward. If the economy evolves as expected, the median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 5.1% at the end of this year, 4.1% at the end of 2025, and 3.1% at the end of 2026. But these projections are not a committee plan or any kind of a decision. As the economy evolves, assessments of the appropriate policy path will adjust in order to best promote our maximum employment and price stability goals. If the economy remains solid and inflation persists, we're prepared to maintain the current target range for the federal funds rate as long as appropriate. If the labor market were to weaken unexpectedly, or if inflation were to fall more quickly than anticipated, we're prepared to respond. Policy is well positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties that we face in pursuing both sides of our dual mandate. We'll continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting, based on the totality of the data and its implications for the outlook and the balance of risks. The Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Restoring price stability is essential to achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the long run. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Leisman, CNBC. Just wondering if you could walk me through the committee's average inflation forecast. Core PCE is now forecast to be 2.8% by the year end. It's already 2.75, and after today's number, there were several forecasts on the street that it would be 2.6 at the end of this month. Does that tell you that the average official expects no further progress in inflation, and in fact that it's going to get worse? And if you have this wrong, doesn't it mean that you could have wrong the outlook for rates there?
Yeah, so what's going on there is that we had very low readings in the second half of last year, June through December, really. And we're now lapping those. So as you go through the 12-month window, a very low reading drops out and a new reading comes in. The new reading gets added to the 12-month window. So it's just a slight element of conservatism that we're assuming a certain level of incoming monthly PCE and core PCE numbers. We're assuming, a good but not great numbers. And if you put that on top of where we are now, you get a very slight increase in the 12-month reading. Now, do we have high confidence that that's right? No, it's just a kind of conservative way for forecasting things. If we were to get more readings like today's reading, then of course that wouldn't be the case. So it's just a forecasting device. I think let me say that we welcome today's reading and hope for more like that.
But if it comes in, just to follow up, it comes in the way you forecast it, it would seem strange for you to be cutting rates at all in context of a rising core PCE. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what we said is that we don't think it'll be appropriate to reduce rates and begin to loosen policy until we have more confidence that inflation is moving back down to 2% on a sustainable basis. And that's the test we've applied. I don't know that this rules that in or out. I mean, really, it's a forecast, a fairly conservative forecast, month by month, that would lead to slightly higher 12 months rates by the end of the year. If we get, better ratings than that, then you will see that come down or remain the same. If you're at 2.6, 2.7, that's a really good place to be.
Nick Tamarosa of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, if I look at the rate projections, I see 15 of the 19 that are anticipating either one or two cuts this year, fairly evenly split between the two. And so I wonder if you could explain a little bit more the nuances or the differences there. Would 2 or 3 more inflation readings, like the one that we saw this morning, make a September interest rate cut possible?
So as far as the SEP part of that is concerned, as you know, I talk to all of the other participants on the FOMC every cycle, and we talk about their summary of economic projections and the their dot plot and everything. And what I hear and see is that people are looking at a range of plausible outcomes, and in many cases they're thinking, I can't really distinguish between two of these. They're so close for me. These are very close calls. But we ask them to write down the most likely one, so they do. And I think as you've said, there's 15 of the 19 are kind of clustered around one or two. So I think I would look at all of them as plausible, but I'd look at, I think that does tell you kind of what the committee thinks. But what everyone agrees on is it's going to be data dependent. No one brings to this or takes away from it, that is on the committee, a really strong commitment to a particular rate path. It's actually just their forecast, and it's a combination of their forecast and their own reaction function. But again, everyone would say that this is very data dependent, and I don't hold it with high confidence. And I think if you're looking for, and don't really think that they're not trying to send a strong signal that this is what I think is the right thing. It's just what they think at a given moment in time, subject to data. In terms of future meetings, we haven't, we don't make decisions about future meetings until we get there. I think in terms of what we need to see, I mentioned it earlier, we want to gain further confidence. Certainly, more good inflation readings will help with that. I'm not going to be specific about how many because, really it's going to be not just the inflation readings, it's going to be the totality of the data. What's happening in the labor market, what's happening with the balance of risks, what's happening with the forecast, what's happening with growth. You look at all of that and you ask, are we confident, have we reached an appropriate level of confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably to 2%? Or alternatively, do we see really unexpected signs of weakness in the labor market that would call for a response? Which is another thing that could happen. But again, we don't see that. And we see today's report as progress and as building confidence, but we don't see ourselves as having the confidence that would warrant beginning to loosen policy at this time.
And if I could quickly follow up, did you or any of your colleagues change your interest rate projections after 8:30 or whenever you got the inflation numbers today?
So this happens too often, but it does happen. It just is, data came, I think it happened a few meetings ago. So when that happens, when there's an important data print during the meeting, first day or second day, what we do is we make sure people remember that they have the ability to update. We tell them how to do that. And some people do, some people don't, most people don't. And I'm not going to get into the specifics, but you have the ability to do that so that what's in the SEP actually does reflect the data that we got today to the extent you can, reflect it in one day. I think we'll see PPI tomorrow. We'll know more about the PCE reading as the month goes on, but the initial CPI reading and its, kind of first level translation to PCE we did have this morning. We were briefed about it, and people were able to consider whether they should make changes. And as I said, some people generally do, but most people generally don't.
John Allen.
Hi, Chair Powell, Janelle Marte from Bloomberg. As you noted, the labor market is now in many ways back to where it was before the pandemic.
All right, Powell, tell us something new, goddammit.
How officials are viewing that. So do you think that there still needs to be more cooling in the labor market to bring inflation all the way down to 2%? Or is there any sense that maybe the labor market is more vulnerable now to higher rates now that many of those imbalances have eased?
Sure. So by so many measures, the labor market was kind of overheated 2 years ago, and we've seen it gradually move back into much better balance between supply and demand. So what have we seen? We've seen labor force supply come up quite a bit through immigration and through recovering participation. That's ongoing mostly now through the immigration channel, but still we've had some increases in prime age labor force. In terms of on the demand side, we've seen quits moving down. We've seen job openings moving down. We've seen wage increases moving from very, very high levels a couple of years ago back down to more sustainable levels. We have seen unemployment creep up now 0.6 over the course of a year or so, very, very gradually. So you put all that together, what you have is still low unemployment, still 4% unemployment, historically low. But it's moved up a little bit. It's softened a bit, and that's an important statistic. But more than that, you've got strong job creation. You have payroll jobs still coming in strong, even though there's an argument that they may be a bit overstated, but still they're strong. So that's what we see. We watch the labor market, of course, and the economy as a whole, but the labor market very carefully, and that's what we see. We see gradual cooling, gradual moving toward better balance. We're monitoring it carefully for signs of something more than that, but we really don't see that.
As a quick follow-up, the surveys that make up the jobs report are showing different tales. There's been some divergence, especially we saw in the last report that we got on Friday. So how do you interpret that, and how does it change your view on the labor market?
So sometimes you can't reconcile the differences. You just have to look at it and try to understand. And that's why it always makes sense to look at a series, in 3, 6, and 12 months of things rather than just one report. But you're right to point to the last report where there were job losses in the household survey, job gains, big job gains in the establishment survey. So, we're left with ambiguous results, and we have to deal with that uncertainty around data. Nonetheless, the overall picture is one of a strong and gradually cooling, gradually rebalancing labor market. Job openings, while they've come way down, are still, greater than the number of unemployed people. The jobs workers gap is still a significantly positive number, greater than it was before the pandemic. So overall, we're looking at what is still a very strong labor market, but not the superheated labor market of 2 years ago, or even 1 year ago.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. Back on the rates path, the SEP showed quite a large shift of rate cut expectations relative to March. That's a period in which the economic data flow hasn't been that dramatic a shift. Can you provide some color on what changed in attitudes on the committee over the last 3 months to see a much shallower path of rate cuts this year?
Yeah, the big thing that changed was the inflation forecast. So the
Modern
inflation
day
forecast
Santa,
moved
I
up
like
several
that.
tenths for the end of the year. And as I mentioned earlier in the, what did we take away from this? We had really, really good inflation data in the second half of last year, then kind of a pause in progress in the first quarter. And what we took away from that was that it's probably going to take longer to get the confidence that we need to begin to loosen policy. So the sense of that is that rate cuts that might have taken place this year take place next year. There are fewer rate cuts in the median this year, but there's one more next year. So if you look at year-end 2025 and 26, you're almost exactly where you would have been. Just it's moved later because of that progress. Now you get different data today. So we'll have to see where the data light the way. The economy has repeatedly
Let the data show
surprised
us the way,
forecasters in both
Powell
directions.
says.
And today was certainly a better inflation report than almost anybody expected. And we'll just have to see what the incoming data flow brings and how that affects the outlook and the balance of risks.
Oh, wow. What's new?
Gina Smiley, New York Times. Thanks for taking our questions. In the summary of economic projections, the long-run interest rate forecast moved up a bit. I wonder if we should read that as a sign that you think that policy is not sort of as restrictive as we previously expected. How should we interpret what that means about how the committee views its current policy setting?
So two things about that. One is this. You're right, it did move up, but I want to remember to point out that long-run neutral rate of interest is a long-run concept. It really is a theoretical concept, can't be directly observed, and what it is the interest rate that would hold the economy at equilibrium, maximum employment, and price stability, potentially years in the future where there are no shocks. So it's a little bit, it's not something we observe today. Today we've got a very specific economy with all kinds of shocks we're still getting over from the pandemic. So it's, I don't think that the concept of R-star, it's a very important concept in economics and in what we do, but honestly, it doesn't really get you where you need to be to think about what appropriate policy is in the near term. But back to your original question, people have been gradually writing it up because I just think people are coming to the view that rates are less likely to go down to their pre-pandemic levels, which were very low by recent history measures. Now we can't really know that. That's an interesting dispute and discussion to have now. But ultimately, We think that things like the neutral rate are driven by longer run, slow-moving forces. And, there's a really good question about whether those really have changed or whether instead rates and the economy are experiencing a series of persistent but ultimately temporary shocks. That's been the debate, and we can't know. But in the meantime, we're making policy with the economy that we have, with the distortions that we have. And I also, to your other point, I think it is the case that as time has gone by, the question of how restrictive is policy has become one that everyone's asking, and we're asking it too. And my answer has been that policy is restrictive. The question of whether it's sufficiently restrictive is going to be one we know over time. But I think for the reasons I talked about at the last press conference and other places, I think the evidence is pretty clear that policy is restrictive and is having the effects that we would hope for.
Well, thanks, Chair Powell. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just to carry that a little further, should we read this as a conclusion, the combination of tipping to one cut this year and acknowledging further progress on inflation as kind of a mark to market on the level of restrictiveness that you need, that you in fact have concluded that you weren't quite there yet?
I'd be reluctant to try to draw that conclusion. I think this is about, looking at the incoming data and asking how much progress are we making on inflation and how is the rest of the economy doing? Is the labor market still strong? That's what we're thinking about. You can translate it into the language you're talking about, but to me the focus is more on we have a goal which is price stability, another goal which is maximum employment. How are we doing there? We think we've got a good, strong labor market still. We think we've been making progress toward the price stability goal. And then for a while there was a pause, and we look at today's thing and we think, well, that's a good reading, and we hope we get more like that. And in the meantime, we're asking, is our policy stance about right? And we think, yes, it's about right. We're prepared to adjust it as appropriate, but we think we're getting the things that we would want to get, broadly speaking. And that's why we've been at this policy right now for almost a year.
So just to follow up on that, I think one curious thing here is you've got now this restrictive policy in place and virtually no change in any of the major things for all of this year. You've got growth that stays above long-run potential throughout the forecast period, unemployment that never goes above the long-run estimate, right, of 4.2. So this isn't a story of slack improving inflation. So where's the improvement in inflation coming from that it's going to pick up pace so much in 2025?
Well, it's been coming. Where's it been coming from? We'll start with that. Clearly, a lot of some of what we've been getting is just the reversal of the unwinding of the pandemic-related distortions to both supply and demand, and that is complemented by and amplified, supported by restrictive monetary policy. So those two things have been working together. We've also had a very positive supply shock on the labor side, and also you get a positive supply shock when the supply conditions unwind and return to normal. So you've had above trend potential growth and high growth, and yet you've had the benefit of inflation coming down really fast actually last year, and we'll see what the rest of this year brings. So these dynamics can continue as long as they continue. Ultimately, the question is are you down to demand? And we don't know that, though. We're look at today's report. If we see more like that, we can't know what the future holds. But in the meantime, we've made pretty good progress on inflation with our current stance.
There's no time to say anything in between
Bloomberg
these.
Radio and Television. The base case of the committee seems to be that there is going to be at least one rate cut this year, but your growth forecast doesn't see any slowdown in the rest of the year, nor does the unemployment forecast see any significant weakening of the labor market. And your inflation forecasts basically average out to no change. So if at the end of the year there is no change from conditions now, why would you anticipate cutting rates? What would be the point for a rate cut?
Well, we think policy is restrictive, and we think ultimately that if you just set policy at a restrictive level, eventually you will see real weakening in the economy. So that's always been the thought, is that since we raised rates this far, we've always been pointing to cuts at a certain point. Not to eliminate the possibility of hikes, but no one has that as their base case. So no one on the committee does. But so that's how we think about it, and that's what we've been getting. That's what we've been getting is good progress on inflation, with growth at a good level, and with a strong labor market. Now, ultimately, we think rates will have to come down to continue to support that, but so far they haven't had to, and that's why we're watching so carefully for signs of weakness. We don't really see that. We kind of see what we wanted to see, which was gradual cooling in demand, gradual rebalancing in the labor market, while we're continuing to make progress on inflation. So we're getting good results here.
Well, to follow up, is there any kind of concern for the housing industry or financial stability, banks, in leaving rates where they are for too long at this point?
On housing, the housing situation is a complicated one, and you can see that's a place where rates are really having a significant effect. Ultimately, the best thing we can do for the housing market is to bring inflation down so that we can bring rates down so that the housing market can continue to normalize. There will still be a national housing shortage, as there was before the pandemic. There will still be one, but the distortions that we see now with lock-ins and things like that, low mortgages. In terms of banks, the banking system has been, solid, strong, well-capitalized, lending. We've seen good performance by the banks. We had the turmoil early last year, but banks have been focusing on bringing up their liquidity, bringing up their capital, and having risk management plans in place. So the banking system, seems to be in good shape.
Chris.
Thanks. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. I was wondering if we can, on inflation, if you can tell us a little more about where you see inflationary pressure in the economy. You mentioned labor markets coming into better balance, and inflation expectations appear to be well anchored. You're seeing, anecdotal stories of the large chains like Walmart and Target are announcing price cuts. McDonald's announcing a $5 meal deal. So, people may still be unhappy about prices at the grocery store, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of inflationary pressure left in this economy. I wonder if you could tell us more about it.
I think it's true that inflationary pressures have come down, but we're still getting high inflation readings. So, and I think you can see it in various places. In some parts of non-housing services, you see elevated inflation still, and that's probably it could be to do with wages. Goods prices have kind of fluctuated. There's been a surprising increase in import prices on goods, which is kind of hard to understand, and we've taken some signal from that. But and of course, housing services, you're continuing to see high readings there. To some extent, that's catch-up inflation from earlier pressures. But overall, you're right. Inflationary pressures have come down. As I mentioned, the labor market has come into better balance. Wages are still running, I would say, above a sustainable path, which would be that of trend inflation and trend productivity. You're still seeing wage increases moving above that. We haven't thought of wages as being the principal, cause of inflation, but at the same time, getting back to 2% inflation is likely to require return to a more sustainable level, which is somewhat below the current level of increases in the aggregate.
Rachel.
Hi, Chair Powell, Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thanks for taking our questions. There's obviously a lot of focus on how many cuts could be expected this year, but can you give us a sense of what one cut by the end of the year would actually do to the economy, what you think would be a meaningful difference if there was a cut by the end of the year, or even two?
I think if you look back in 5 or 10 years and try to pull out the significance to the U.S. economy of one 25 basis point rate cut, you'd have quite a job on your hands. So that's not how we look at it. Really the whole rate path matters, and I do continue to think that when we do start to loosen policy, that will show up in a significant loosening in financial market conditions, and the market will price in what it prices in. I have no way of saying, we're not at that stage, so I don't know what we'll be thinking about at that time. But it's a consequential decision for the economy, and you want to get it right. And fortunately, we have a strong economy, and we have the ability to, approach this question carefully. And we will approach it carefully while we're very much keeping an eye on, downside economic risks should they emerge.
And you've been talking about this clear sense that it's just going to take longer to have the confidence that's needed for rate cuts. Is there something about what happened in the first couple of months of the year that you're seeing differently now with more time or hindsight? Do you still characterize it as expected bumpiness or something more lasting that is affecting your policy for the rest of the year?
We you always want to avoid the tendency to dismiss the parts of inflation that we don't like and just make it go away. But we had a quarter where inflation was running higher, and yes, I could stand here and say it's stuff we shouldn't have taken signal from, but it is what it is. You have to, low inflation is low inflation, high inflation. So if you have a quarter where it's higher, we tried not to take signal from the first couple of months, but we got a third month and we said, okay, the signal we're taking is that we think it's going to take longer to get confidence that inflation is moving sustainably on 2%. That's what we said. I think that was the right thing to do. I still think that's the right thing to do. Now we have today's inflation reading, which is very different, very much more positive. We're going to have to see what the trend is, what's going to be the data going forward. We're looking for something that gives us confidence that inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. And readings like today's, that's a step in the right direction. But one reading isn't. It's only one reading. You don't want to be too motivated by any single data point.
Jolene. Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you for taking our questions. I'm Jolene Kent with CBS News. What's your message to Americans who are seeing encouraging economic data but don't feel good about this economy?
All right, Jason, don't start.
I don't think anyone knows, has a definitive answer why people are not as happy about the economy as they might be. And we don't tell people how they should think or feel about the economy. That's not our job. People experience what they experience. All I can tell you is what the which is we've got an economy that's growing at a solid pace. We've got a very strong labor market with unemployment at 4%. It's been a long time since we've had a long stretch of time with unemployment at or below 4%, very long time. We had a period of high inflation. Inflation has come down really significantly, and we're doing everything we can to bring that inflationary episode fully to a halt and fully restore price stability. We're confident that we'll get there. And in the meantime, it's going to be painful for people, but the ultimate pain would be a period of a long period of high inflation. It is people who, lower income people who are at the margins of the economy who have the worst experience, who experience the most pain from inflation. So, it's for those people, for all Americans, but particularly for those people that we're doing everything we can to bring inflation back down under control.
As just a quick follow-up here, you've indicated one interest rate cut sometime this year, and I know you don't have a crystal ball up there, but a lot of people are watching and see, borrowing money remains very expensive. For everybody who's out there waiting on a rate cut, about when can consumers expect some relief?
Well, I don't have a precise date for you, but what we said is that we want to make sure that we're confident that inflation is actually moving back down to 2%. And when we are, then we can look at loosening policy. So having that kind of confidence that inflation will be at 2%, it just pays benefits to the whole economy, to all Americans for a long period of time. We had that period for a very long time. We very much want to get back to a place where people can not think about inflation. It's just not a concern in the everyday economic decisions that they make. We were there for a long time, and our goal is to get back to that place. And we've made good progress, and we're in the phase now of just sticking with it until we get it done.
Claire.
Claire Jones, Financial Times. Just drawing on the change in the statement on there being modest further progress on inflation. Halfway, through the year and after today's CPI release, what have you and other committee members found that has been particularly encouraging to you? And just in terms of the conservatism, how much of that is about stickiness in shelter inflation in particular? Thank you.
So encouraging has been that growth, the growth clearly that we had last year, and particularly the second half of last year, and we continue to see still strong growth or solid growth this year. That's been very encouraging. If you go back a year, there was a real concern about, very much slowing growth and a recession. Many forecasters had that, and that's not what happened. Instead, the U.S. is anyway, and it's in sharp distinction with many other advanced economies around the world. So that's been encouraging. I would say that today's inflation report is encouraging, but it comes after, several your reports that were not so encouraging. You ask about. Your second question was really about shelter inflation. So I think if you go back a couple of years, we know that there are renters, and then there are people who own their houses, and we have OER, which is owner's equivalent rent. And so when market-based rents go up sharply, as they did at the beginning of when the economy reopened, they really went up sharply. Those play into rollover rents much more slowly for existing tenants than they do for new tenants. And so we found now that there are big lags. So there's sort of a bulge of high past increases in market rents that has to get worked off, and that may take several years. Nonetheless, as long as market rents are going up at relatively low levels, and they still are, this is just going to happen. It just is going to happen more slowly than we thought. We also do sort of this thing where we impute a rental value to owned homes, and that's many countries around the world do that. Some do it differently than us. It's something that the price experts have regularly looked at. It is not something that we're the only country that does, and it's not something we're looking at changing or would look at changing, anytime soon. But it's true. It's one of the very hardest things in inflation and in prices is how to think about, the services that someone is getting by living in a home that they could rent, but they're actually living in it. And some countries choose to just ignore that, but that's not how we do inflation here. We do it the way we do it, and we've been very transparent about it. And it's true that we're seeing delays in realizing what's happening economically, but we understand that. We understand that very well.
Edward. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. Thank you for taking the question, Chair Powell. So I want to go back to jobs and the consumer. The last jobs report showed that over the past year, 634,000 more people took multiple jobs. That's up 8.2%. And since January of 2021, we've seen prices rise 19%. So people are using their credit cards to pay for their lifestyle. What pressure points will signal to you that the slowing economy could maybe break companies in terms of hiring or break the consumer in terms of spending?
So, we monitor all the things you mentioned and more. What we're seeing is basically spending was going up faster than disposable income during big parts of last year rather. And so what you'd expect to see is people spending more on their credit cards. That has been happening. Credit card balances have been going up. Credit card defaults have been going up. They're not at high levels. Remember that after the pandemic, people were cooped up. They couldn't spend money. They couldn't go out to spend money. They could spend money from home. But households were in very, very strong, historically strong financial shape. They've now worked off a lot of that. So we're watching that carefully. And, what do we see? That's what we see. We see the same data that everybody else sees, but you've still got household sector that's in pretty good shape. But nonetheless, it's not in the kind of shape it was in a year or two ago. And we're carefully watching that.
So how close then are we to that point where the consumer can't continue to spend as they're spending, or companies can't hire like they're hiring?
Consumer spending is still growing. It's not growing at the pace it was growing at a year or so ago, but it's still growing solidly. And by the way, other parts of the economy are picking up. Spending on equipment and intangibles has picked up quite a bit in the wake of all the construction that we saw of new tech plants. So overall, the economy is exhibiting solid growth, and something around 2%, which is a good pace of growth for the U.S. economy. But you're right though. We do see the same thing other people see, which is increasing financial pressures on more lower income people. And you know, the best thing we can do is to foster a very strong jobs economy, which we think we have done, ultimately to get inflation under control, because those people experience inflation, you know, very directly, very painfully. And you know, once we get inflation under control, rates can come down, which will also improve things.
Victoria. Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. You've mentioned that an unexpected weakening in the labor market would bring rate cuts sooner, and I was just wondering, can you talk a little bit about what that would look like? Is it more of like a quicker pace of people losing jobs? Is it more the level of the unemployment rate if it were to start to go above 4.2 or something like that? How are you thinking about what you're looking for to see the job market unexpectedly weaken?
You know, when I say unexpectedly, the first thing is more than kind of is in our forecast or in common forecasts. So something more than that. But we'll be looking at everything. You know, the labor market, you know, has the ability, has the tendency sometimes to move and to weaken quickly. So waiting for that to happen is not what we're doing. You know, we're watching very carefully. We're looking at the balance of risks. I always point out the balance of risks. So, and also the fact that we look at all of the whole situation. So, you know, a decision to begin to, you know, to loosen policy could have several reasons associated with it at a given time. But I would just, you know, we monitor all the labor market data, and if we saw troubling weakening more than expected, then that would be something we'd consider responding to. But we look at the broader context of what's going on too.
So something like negative payroll numbers would be.
I'm not going to. I mean, I can think of things that would, many things would make it on that list, but I don't think I'll utter them here.
That's pretty good.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Simon Urbanovich with The Economist. May I ask, you mentioned with the slightly higher PC readings earlier this year that it wasn't 1 or 2 months, but 3 months that tipped you to be a bit more cautious in the rate outlook. Should we take from that, you know, it looks like May will be quite good for PC as it was for CPI. Does that imply that kind of 2 more good months would reinstill the confidence that rate cuts could be coming sooner than you currently project?
You know, I don't actually have that kind of mechanical thing in my thinking. I get that, you know, as many good ones as we had bad ones, but no, it's not like that. It's the whole, it's going to be the totality of the data. The labor market data, the growth data, in terms of inflation, you know, you'd want to see real progress that builds your confidence that we are on a path down to 2%. And I don't want to try to give you specific numbers of things, because that points to dates, and I just don't think we're not at a point of being able to do that.
Kosuke.
Thank you for doing this. I'm Kosuke Takami with Nikkei. I would like to know about the impact of stronger dollar on U.S. economic growth and prices. And I have no doubt that the market should determine the exchange rate, but Japan and some emerging markets are suffering from the strong dollar. So I want to know if it is having a positive impact on U.S. economy in total. Thank you.
So we don't, actually it's our finance ministry, the Treasury Department, that has a responsibility for thinking about and if it sees fit, doing things about the level of the dollar. So for us, it's just another financial variable, and you're right, the dollar has been, has exhibited some strength over the course of the last year or so because the U.S. economy is very strong. We don't think of it as benefiting or hurting the U.S. We don't manage the level of the dollar. That's not our job. It's not, you know, and for our economy, what we're trying to foster is maximum employment and price stability, and we feel like we've made good progress on both of those goals over the course of the past year.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. You said you would cut rates before inflation falls to 2%. You're forecasting inflation to end the year at 2.8% on core PCE, or at 2.8%, of course, on core PCE. Right now, you said the inflation forecast is conservative and that if you got 2.6 to 2.7 on PCE, that would be a good place to be. You also indicated the job market has mostly normalized. So why not cut rates this summer just once? You're well above neutral to try to preserve the soft landing rather than risking waiting too long in the quest for confidence for inflation.
You know, so we're well aware of the two-sided risks here. Let me just say, we understand that if we wait too long, that could come at the cost of economic activity, of employment, of the expansion. We understand that if we move too quickly, we could end up undoing a lot of the good that we've done and have to then start over, and it could be very disruptive. So we're extremely aware of both of those risks and just basically trying to manage them. And what we said is that we don't think it'll be appropriate to begin to loosen policy until we're more confident that inflation is moving down to 2% over time on a sustainable basis. That's kind of been our test. Or there's another test, which is, you know, an unexpected deterioration in labor market conditions. So I think that's the right way for us to think about it. That's our dual mandate there. And you know, we have a strong economy. We've got growth. All forecasts are very commonly around 2%. That's a strong growth rate for our economy. The labor market continues to print jobs at a pretty high rate. Unemployment's still low, so we have the ability now to approach this question carefully, and that's what we're doing.
And just to follow Chair Powell, do you need to be ahead of a weakening in the labor market? Otherwise, is it too late, given that the labor market is a lagging indicator, right, when you look at the monthly jobs data?
Yeah, we completely understand that that's the
Hey,
risk,
here comes
and
the spy a bit.
That's not our plan, is to wait for things to break and then try to fix them. We're trying to balance these two goals in a way that is consistent with our framework, and we think we're doing that.
Evan.
You guys are wild.
Thank you, Chair Powell. Evan Reiser with Market News International. You have mentioned before the framework review process will start in the latter half of the year. At this point, do you have any specific time frame for the start of that? Who will lead it? Will it be you or a committee group of your peers? What will be the parameters? Do you anticipate the review will consider changes to communications going forward?
So what we've been thinking is that we would announce and commence the review later or late in the year. In the meantime, as that time approaches, we will be devoting a lot of careful thought and planning to the contours of it. Within scope would certainly be communications generally. I'm not going to say that we'll look at this or that particular thing, and all the other details. We don't want to get prematurely into a conversation until it's really time to have it. And so, I'm going to leave pretty much everything else to later in the year.
Go to Nancy for the last question.
Last
Hi,
question.
Chair Powell, Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. Just one more question on housing. Can you still cut rates with shelter prices high, or will you wait until they start to moderate a bit?
I wouldn't. There isn't any one variable like housing prices moderating that would really decide against what we're doing. We've got an overall test, which is greater confidence that inflation is moving down to 2% on a sustainable basis. That's our overall test. Or alternatively, we see unexpected weakening in the labor market. So those are two different tests. I would say, we're not looking at any one price in any one sector and saying that's the one. We don't target housing prices, for example, and we don't target wages. We target aggregate prices and overall employment. So,
but if housing prices remain sticky, could that slow down the pace of rate cuts?
I think you'd look at we'd be looking at the aggregate numbers and asking ourselves what's going on here with inflation at the aggregate level. And, and of
One
course,
sentence, SPY will be at an all-time high.
Any price that contributed
One more
to
cent.
ongoing
There we go.
inflation
All-time
would
highs.
matter. Any price that
543.98.
contributed to ongoing disinflation
Coming
would
in on
matter
the
too.
SPY with
But I wouldn't
JP
single out
talking.
housing as having a special role there. Thank you very much.
It's all right. That last question was kind of bad anyways. Oh, they brought the elevator music back. Oh, how nice of you, Federal Reserve. I appreciate you, but I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday here. You know, the market's making all-time highs. We're seeing some of the craziest moves that we've seen out of stocks in a long, long time in the stock market. So if you guys enjoyed it, smash that like button. Let's go. We're at 46 likes. I know that we can get that number higher. If you are new, make sure you smash that subscribe button as well. I go live every morning when the market opens for about a couple hours, so smash that up if you're interested in the stock market. Pretty weird movements here, though, overall today. Let me get this background music turned off. Oh, it ended. Get our car music back on here. Oh, no.
Good afternoon.
Where'd it
My colleagues
go?
and I remain squarely focused on our dual mandate to promote.
It got stuck under my other tabs. All right. There we go. Microsoft selling back down, actually, right now. Man, I was just talking about everything doing so well. The SPY literally made an all-time high and said, nope. Literally 2 1-minute candles later, and it sells all the way back off. I mean, how much more brutal can you get? Seriously. Wow, that's a letdown at that all-time high. Definitely watch 544 as resistance. That's going to be a big spot. Keep an eye on here. Yeah, SPY's dropping, like Demir said, too soon. No kidding. Soup said the music's making me emotional. I like it, Soup. Man, that's some pretty bad red candles there. Let's check our watch list one time real quick. ARM's going nuts, 8.69% still on the day. It's not necessarily at highs at the moment. It pulled back with the SPY, but it was running up quite a bit. Got the 158.50. Man, I remember this morning people were hoping it broke 150. So we're talking about 160 now. That was a wild move. Oracle had earnings, but man, that was pretty insane. Affirm was a fun one early on. Wild how it started pulling back all of a sudden out of nowhere. I don't think that there's any like specific reason for that. That's the really big thing, is that they're looking at one rate cut this year. At least that's what they're pricing in on their dot plot. But that's the midpoint for this year. One more. Apple's really fallen off. Microsoft too. Wow. I guess people had to start taking profits somewhere, right? They had to somewhere. Looking at on the SPY now, we're going to have to watch support coming up around 541.25 to 541. Pretty big supports. You jinxed it. I'm sorry, Demir. If SPY loses 541.35, it should be straight down, Jeanette said. That's kind of what I'm looking for, too. Somewhere very close to there, Jeanette. Yeah, everything's dropping. Look at our 4-chart setup right now with the 4 biggest stocks out there. Or I should say the 3 biggest stocks and then SPY. But look at them all down. Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple. Pretty brutal right there. I love it, Demir. Biggest mic drop ever, Serve said. Hell yeah. That's a bad mic drop right here. We're going to need an encore, guys. Come on, chant encore for Powell. We need him to get back out here to get these prices back up. Nah, that's a pretty wild move, though. That's what happens with these FOMC events. They are wild, but I hope that you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I gotta go. We gotta start getting the stuff together for the video tonight and other stuff in the Discord. So I really appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a fantastic one. Thanks for joining up for the Powell event. Thanks for dealing with our traditions and stuff. But other than that, have a great rest of the day. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. And of course, don't forget about tonight's video and the live Q&A. That Q&A will be at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Central. So let's go. I'll see you guys then. Have a great one. See you in the Discord. Damn, look at NVIDIA. That sucks. I can't leave now, but there goes the SPY right down to almost to... There was a wick right here extending to like 540.80, so watch out. But see you later, guys.